The night sky was calm at first. A blanket of stars stretched endlessly, quiet and eternal, as if nothing could ever disturb the peace. Then, without warning, the silence was torn apart. A streak of fire burned across the heavens, brighter than any falling star. Trees shuddered as the air cracked with sound. Birds scattered in fright, and animals ran into the shadows of the forest. The burning ship fell lower and lower, tearing through the clouds. Pieces of glowing metal broke away and rained into the dark woods. Finally, with a sound like the world itself was breaking, the craft slammed into the earth. The ground shook, smoke rose, and flames lit the trees with a violent orange glow. From the wreckage, a figure crawled out. Her name was Alira. She was not human. Her skin shimmered faintly silver in the firelight, her hair almost like strands of light itself, soft and flowing despite the blood that streaked her face. She gasped for air, coughing on smoke, her limbs trembling as she dragged herself onto the soft ground. Her ship was gone, destroyed beyond repair. Her crew, her family, no one else had survived the fall. Alira collapsed onto the cold earth. The pain in her side was sharp, but worse than the wounds was the loneliness. She had never been on this world before. She had heard of Idrith, the planet of humans. Her people spoke of it in warnings. The humans, they said, were unpredictable, violent, primitive. If she was found by them, she would die. That was what she had been taught. Her vision blurred. She felt the heat of the burning ship behind her, and the cool night air against her face. The stars above, which once gave her comfort, now looked like distant eyes, watching her final moments. She whispered in her own tongue, words carried away by the wind, "I will die here, alone." But the universe had other plans. Far away, in a small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest, a man sat by a fire of his own. Nathan was simple by all measures. A mechanic in a nearby town, he worked with grease on his hands and tools in his pockets. Life had been heavy on his shoulders lately, so he had come into the forest for peace, hoping that the quiet would ease the weight inside him. He liked to lie back on the grass and stare at the sky. The stars had always made him feel small, but safe. Tonight, however, the stars were not safe. He saw it, the streak of fire cutting across the heavens. At first he thought it was a meteor, then it grew larger, brighter, closer. His heart raced. He felt the earth shake when it hit, and without thinking, he grabbed a flashlight and ran toward the smoke. Every instinct told him to stay away. If it was a military craft, or some kind of dangerous object, he could be in trouble. But curiosity was stronger than fear, and something in his gut whispered that someone might need him. Nathan had never ignored that voice before. He ran through the trees, the smell of burning metal guiding him closer. Branches scratched his arms, roots nearly tripped him, but he pressed on. At last, he broke through the undergrowth and stood. Frozen there, among the fire and twisted wreckage, was a figure unlike any he had ever seen. For a moment, he thought his mind was playing tricks. The glow of her skin, the strange shape of her clothing, the way she lay crumpled on the ground, it was not possible. She was not human. Nathan's breath caught. He wanted to run. Every story he had ever read about aliens came crashing through his mind: monsters, invasions, horror. But then, she moved. She coughed, weakly raising a trembling hand as if to shield herself. Her eyes opened, glowing faint blue, full of pain and fear. In that instant, she didn't look like a monster. She didn't look like an invader. She looked fragile, lost, dying. Nathan stepped forward, slowly, carefully. His voice was shaky, but soft. "Hey," he whispered. "Don't worry, I've got you." The alien girl's gaze lingered on him. She could not understand his words, not yet, but she understood the tone. For the first time since the crash, she felt a thread of hope. The fire roared around them, shadows dancing wildly on the trees. In the middle of chaos, a strange beginning was born, A human who refused to walk away, and an alien girl who realized she might not have to die alone. Nathan had never believed his quiet life could change in a single night. He was just a man who fixed engines, repaired farm tools, and lived in a small town that most maps forgot. People called him dependable, sometimes stubborn, but never extraordinary. To him, the world was small. His workshop, his cabin, the woods where he often wandered when life grew heavy. He was ordinary until the moment he saw her. The strange figure lay among the burning wreck, half buried in the dirt. Her body was trembling, her silver skin glowing faintly in the firelight. Nathan had seen accidents before, had helped people, when cars overturned on country roads, but this was different. This was not a person from his world. His heart thudded in his chest, torn between fear and compassion. For a few seconds, he simply stared. The smell of smoke filled his lungs, the crackle of fire in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to leave before he was caught up in something far beyond him. But he saw the blood on her side, the way she struggled just to breathe, and he could not move away. There was something in her eyes so human, despite their glows, that begged for help. Nathan knelt beside her, his hands shaking. "It's okay," he whispered, though he knew she wouldn't understand. "I'll help you." The alien girl Alira watched him with wide, fearful eyes. His words were meaningless to her, but the tone reached deeper than language. She had grown up hearing warnings about humans, dangerous, selfish, quick to destroy what they didn't understand. But the face above her now was not filled with cruelty. It was filled with worry. Nathan carefully touched her arm, checking if she could sit up. She flinched, weak and defensive, but she did not push him away. Her skin was cooler than he expected, smooth and faintly glowing under his rough fingers. He could feel how fragile she was in that moment, how close she was to breaking completely. "I need to get you out of here," he muttered, more to himself than to her. He glanced around. The flames were spreading, eating through the trees. If he left her here, she would not survive. And somehow, leaving her to die felt impossible. He slid one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her knees. She was lighter than he expected, almost like carrying a child, but every movement made her wince. "I'm sorry," he whispered again as he lifted her, careful but urgent. She made a small sound of pain, then rested her head weakly against his chest. Nathan carried her through the forest, away from the wreckage. His flashlight swung wildly as he stumbled over roots and rocks, his heart pounding with every step. He was terrified not only of who she was, but of what might come after her. Was someone searching for her? Would more of her kind arrive? Would they see him as a threat? Questions filled his mind, but he pushed them aside. One step at a time, one breath at a time, just keep moving. Alira could barely keep her eyes open. The world swam around her in blurs of fire and shadow. Yet, she felt the steady beat of the human's heart as he carried her. The warmth of his arms surrounded her like a shield. Her own people had told her that humans were only destroyers, but this one held her as though she mattered. A strange thought grew in her tired mind. Maybe they were wrong. After what felt like hours, Nathan reached his small cabin. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and laid her gently on the old couch. His place was simple wooden walls, shelves cluttered with tools and books, the faint smell of coffee and engine oil lingering in the air. Not the kind of place for something alien and otherworldly. Yet tonight, it became a sanctuary. Nathan knelt beside her again, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You're safe now," he said softly. He didn't know if she understood, but he hoped she could feel the meaning behind his voice. Alira looked around, weak and dazed. The room was strange to her eyes, filled with objects she didn't recognize. But what mattered most was the human, kneeling beside her. He hadn't run. He hadn't attacked. He had saved her. Slowly, with trembling lips, she tried to form a sound, a word, anything. It came out broken, almost a whisper. "Why? Help. Nathan blinked in surprise. She had spoken not perfectly, but enough. His chest tightened as he looked at her, and his answer came without hesitation. Because you needed it. That's enough. She stared at him, silent, as though those words carried more weight than he knew. On her world, no one gave without expecting something in return. But this human had given her life back freely, for the first time since the crash. Alira felt something warm inside her chest. Not safety not yet, but hope. A fragile hope, born from the arms of an ordinary man who chose to be extraordinary. Alira's body healed slowly, but her heart healed even slower. Though Nathan had saved her, carried her from the fire, and treated her wounds with care, fear still lingered deep inside her. Every time he entered the room, she tensed. Every time he touched her arm to change a bandage, her breath caught. Not because of pain, but because she did not know if she could truly trust him. Her people had told her humans were dangerous. They said humans were selfish and cruel, that they would destroy anything they didn't understand. She remembered her teachers' warnings, their sharp voices telling her that Earth was a planet to avoid. Now she was stranded here, in the house of a human, with no ship and no one else to call for. Nathan, meanwhile, treated her like he would any injured person. He brought her water, wrapped her wounds, and gave her food from his own supplies. He even moved his tools aside so she could rest more comfortably on the couch. At night, when the pain grew worse, he stayed awake, checking on her, whispering soft words she didn't fully understand. His voice was rough but gentle, like a song meant only for her ears. One evening, as the fire in his small fireplace flickered warmly, Alira finally found the strength to ask the question that had been haunting her. Her voice was weak, her words broken as she tried to form human speech. Why? Help me. Nathan looked up from the chair, where he was cleaning the cuts on his hand. He frowned, as if surprised she could speak at all, and then his expression softened. Because you needed it, he said simply. That's enough reason. The answer struck her deeply. On her world, no one gave without reason. Kindness always carried a cost. If someone offered help, they expected payment, favor, or power in return. But this man asked for nothing. He had risked his life to carry her from the wreckage. He had shared his food, his water, his home, and now he said it was just because she needed it. Alira's heart ached with confusion. Could such a person be real? Could such a people exist? Days passed, and her body grew stronger. She learned to walk across the room, her steps unsteady, while Nathan watched carefully to catch her if she fell. Sometimes he smiled when she succeeded, and she found herself smiling back before she even realized it. The fear in her chest began to soften, replaced by something else, a strange warmth she could not name. Nathan noticed the change too. At first, she had looked at him with suspicion, like a cornered animal. Now, her eyes met his more often, searching, questioning, sometimes even curious. He could see her trying to understand him, just as he was trying to understand her too. To help her feel at home, Nathan began teaching her small words. He pointed at objects around the room: table, chair, water, light. She repeated them slowly, her voice soft and uncertain, but determined. Sometimes she laughed when she made a mistake, and the sound of her laughter filled the cabin with a brightness that Nathan hadn't heard in years. Still, there were nights when fear returned. Sometimes Alira would wake from sleep, trembling, whispering in her own language words Nathan couldn't understand. He would sit beside her, not speaking, just staying there until her breathing calmed. Once, when she opened her eyes and saw him waiting, she whispered in broken English, "Not, leave me. I won't," Nathan promised. That night, Alira wept quietly, not from pain but from relief. Slowly, the walls between them began to fall. She stopped flinching when he touched her arm. She began to accept the food he offered without suspicion. And sometimes, when the firelight flickered across his face, she studied him not as a stranger, not as a danger, but as someone she wanted to understand. Nathan, too, felt something changing inside him. He had rescued her out of instinct, out of simple human decency. But now, as he saw her grow stronger, as he heard her soft voice trying to shape his words, he realized he wanted more than just to protect her. He wanted her to feel safe. He wanted her to know she was not alone. Evening, as the stars glittered outside, Elira stood by the window, her silver skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. Nathan watched her from across the room, and for the first time, he thought she looked less like a lost alien and more like someone who belonged here. In his world, in his life. She turned to him, her eyes filled with something new, not fear, not confusion, but trust. A fragile trust, fragile like glass, but real. And Nathan knew then, saving her had been the easiest choice of his life. What mattered now was what came next. The days turned into weeks, and the silence of Nathan's small cabin was no longer empty. Where once he had only the sound of creaking wood and the rustle of trees, now there was another presence, soft and steady. Elira. At first, their lives together were awkward. She was still learning, still frightened, and he was unsure of how close he could come without making her uneasy. But slowly, something gentle began to grow between them. A fragile rhythm formed in their days, like two different songs, slowly blending into one melody. Nathan spent hours trying to repair the small device Elira carried from the wreck. He guessed it was a communicator, something to reach her people. The technology was beyond anything he understood, but he refused to give up. He scavenged parts from old radios, wires from broken machines, and tools from his workshop. His hands, rough from years of working with engines, moved carefully over the strange metal. Whenever it sparked or flickered, Elira's eyes would light. With a hope so pure, it pushed him to keep trying. In return, Elira began to share small pieces of herself. Her language was difficult, but little by little, she shaped his words into her voice. She told him the names of stars, pointing through the window to constellations he had never noticed before. Her voice was soft, like wind in tall grass, and when she spoke of her world, her eyes seemed far away, full of longing. Nathan listened, always. He had never been a man of many words, but with her, silence did not feel empty. It felt like space for something deeper. One afternoon, while Nathan worked on the communicator, Elira sat near him, watching. Her silver skin glowed faintly in the sunlight that streamed through the window. For a long time, she was quiet. Then she asked slowly, carefully, "Why, you, alone?" The question caught him off guard. Nathan looked at her, then at his hands. He sighed. "Life happens," he said after a moment. "People leave. Sometimes it's easier to stay away from the world than to be hurt again." Elira tilted her head, trying to understand. Her kind rarely lived in solitude. They were always surrounded by community. To her, his answer sounded heavy, but also true. She whispered softly, "Not alone now." The words struck deeper than she could know. Nathan looked at her and smiled, small but real. For years, he had lived in silence, carrying his pain quietly. Now, sitting in his cabin with this strange, fragile being, he felt something shift inside. Each day brought new discoveries. Nathan taught her how to use his old kettle, how to pour water and wait for it to boil. She laughed the first time she tasted tea, her expression confused at the strange, bitter warmth. He showed her books, and though she couldn't read them yet, she traced her fingers along the lines, fascinated by the shapes of the letters. Sometimes they would sit outside. At night, the forest would hum with crickets, and the stars would glow above them. Nathan would point to a star and ask its name. Elira would tell him, and then tell him the story behind its tales of ancient explorers, of journeys through endless space. Nathan never tired of listening. He didn't understand all her words, but he understood her. And Elira, she found herself watching him more often. His hands were rough, his clothes simple, his life ordinary. Yet, in his ordinariness was something rare: patience, kindness, a strength that did not need to shout. He was unlike anyone she had ever known, and though she could not name the feeling yet, her heart began to reach for him. But fear still lingered in small ways. Sometimes she caught herself wondering if this was only temporary, if soon her people would find her and she would leave. The thought of leaving should have brought comfort. Instead, it brought a sharp ache she did not understand. One evening, as the firelight danced inside the cabin, Elira sat across from Nathan. She studied his face, the lines of worry, the softness in his eyes. He caught her gaze and held it. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was not empty. It was full. She looked away quickly, her cheeks glowing faintly with silver light. Nathan's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, to say something that matched the weight of the moment, but words failed him. Instead, he reached across the table and slid the communicator toward her. "It's not fixed yet," he admitted, "but I'll keep trying." Her hand brushed his as she took it, and for the first time, she did not pull away. That night, as she lay on the couch and he sat nearby, Elira whispered to herself in her own tongue, a soft confession he could not understand, but her heart knew the truth already. The fear that had once filled her was fading, replaced by something stronger, something she had never expected to find here, on a strange planet, in the care of a human dot, something that felt very much like love. The bond between Nathan and Elira grew stronger with each passing day, but peace never lasts forever. The forest that once felt like a shelter soon became a place of shadows, whispering warnings in the night. It began with the sky. One evening, while Nathan and Elira sat outside watching the stars, she suddenly went stiff. Her glowing eyes narrowed, her body trembling as she stared upward. Nathan followed her gaze and saw nothing at first, only the quiet sky. But Elira's voice was sharp, urgent. "They coming?" Nathan frowned. "Who?" She shook her head, struggling to find the words. Finally, she whispered one that made his stomach twist. "Raiders." The word carried weight. From the way her face tightened, from the fear in her voice, Nathan understood these were no rescuers. Whoever they were, they had caused her ship to fall, and now they had found her. That night, the forest was restless. Every sound felt louder: the snapping of branches, the distant howl of an animal, the rustle of leaves in the wind. Nathan lay awake in his small bed, listening, while Elira sat by the window with her communicator in her hands. She pressed the broken device, trying to spark a signal, but it flickered weakly and died. Frustration filled her eyes. She knew they were close. The next evening, the threat revealed itself. Nathan was chopping wood outside when a shadow passed overhead. He looked up and froze. A dark shape moved silently across the sky, blocking the stars. A ship, large and menacing. Nothing like the wrecked craft he had seen before. It hovered for a moment, then disappeared beyond the tree line. Nathan dropped the axe and ran inside. Elira was already on her feet, her face pale with fear. "They here," she whispered. Nathan grabbed the only weapon he owned, an old hunting rifle that hung above the door. It was not much, just a tool he used for deer in the winter, but it was all he had. He loaded it quickly, his hands firm, though his heart was racing. "Stay behind me," he said. But Elira shook her head. Her fear was not for herself alone. She looked at him with desperation. "They want me. If I go, you safe." Nathan's jaw tightened. He stepped closer and looked her straight in the eyes. "No, I don't care who they are. They'll have to go through me first." The words made her chest ache. Never in her life had anyone stood for her this way. Among her people, sacrifice was rare, protection was conditional, yet this human, fragile compared to the enemies. The sky spoke as though her life was worth his own. The forest grew silent. Then came the sound, low hums, mechanical and cruel. Figures appeared between the trees, tall, and armored, their eyes glowing red. Raiders. Their movements were sharp, disciplined. They carried weapons far more advanced than anything Nathan had ever seen. Nathan raised his rifle, his voice steady, despite the odds. "Stop right there." The raiders ignored him. Their leader stepped forward, pointing directly at Elira. His voice was harsh, metallic. "Target located. Return with us, or human dies." Elira felt her knees weaken. She wanted to step forward, to surrender, to save him. But before she could move, Nathan fired. The sound of the shot cracked through the forest, echoing into the night. One raider stumbled, sparks flying from his armor. The others roared and raised their weapons. Nathan stood firm, reloading, firing again. His body shook with adrenaline, but he did not retreat. Every shot was a shield, every step forward a message. "You will not take her." Elira's heart pounded. She knew he could not win against them alone. Yet the fire in his eyes lit something inside her. She had seen warriors among her people, soldiers, trained for battle, but none had ever fought for her like this. This was different. This was human. The raiders advanced, but suddenly Elira felt the communicator in her hands pulse faintly. Nathan's repairs, combined with the energy in the air, had given it one last spark. She pressed the signal with trembling fingers. A desperate call went out into the stars, a beacon of hope. The raiders didn't notice. They were too focused on Nathan, the lone human who refused to fall back. His rifle cracked again, his voice a growl. "You're not taking her." Elira stepped beside him, no longer hiding behind. Her fear was real, but her choice was clear. If this human would stand for her, then she would not abandon him. Together, under the dark sky, they faced the threat. Two against many, fragile against strong. Yet, in that moment, strength was not measured by weapons or armor, but by the fire inside the heart. And no fire in the galaxy burned brighter than the fire of a human protecting someone he cared for. The night was alive with danger. The forest glowed with faint red light as the raiders' weapons hummed, their armor reflecting the fire from Nathan's small cabin. Smoke rose into the sky, carrying with it the smell of burning wood and metal. The air was heavy with fear. Yet in the middle of it stood a single human and an alien girl, fragile against the storm, but refusing to yield. Nathan's rifle cracked again. The recoil shook his shoulder, but he ignored the pain. He aimed, fired, and stepped forward, placing himself between Elira and the armored figures. His breath came fast, but his voice was steady when he shouted, "You'll have to kill me first." Elira's chest tightened at those words. No one had ever spoken them for her. She had grown up in a world where protection was earned, where love was traded like currency, where survival came before loyalty. And yet, this man, a human she had known for only weeks, was willing to give everything for her without asking for anything in return. The raiders spread out, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Their leader raised a weapon, a long black barrel, aimed directly at Nathan's chest. "Human," he growled, "stand down. She belongs to us." "She belongs to no one," Nathan snapped, his finger tightening on the trigger. Elira's mind raced. She knew the truth. Nathan could not win this fight. His weapon was weak compared to theirs. His body, strong by human standards, was fragile compared to the armored giants before them. If she surrendered, they would spare him. If she went with them, he could live. The choice clawed at her heart. Her life in exchange for his dot. Her communicator pulsed again in her hand, faint but alive. The signal she had sent was moving through the stars, but she did not know if anyone would hear it in time. Help might be coming, or it might never arrive. Elira turned to Nathan, her eyes shining. "If I go, you safe?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Nathan's head snapped toward her. "No, don't you dare." His eyes burned with fierce determination. "I didn't save you, carry you out of that fire, keep you alive all this time. just to watch you give up now." Tears stung her eyes. She wanted to argue, but his voice left no space for doubt. He was not afraid for himself. He was afraid of losing her. The raiders moved closer. Their boots pounded the earth, their weapons humming with deadly power. Nathan raised his rifle again, standing tall, though his hands shook from exhaustion. Illyra felt the decision burn inside her. Her people had told her humans were violent, selfish, primitive. But tonight she saw the truth. Humans carried something greater than fear. They carried a fire that could stand against impossible odds. A fire that could protect, even when the body was weak. A fire that could love. She stepped forward, placing herself beside Nathan instead of behind him. Her hand brushed his arm, steadying his shaking form. For a moment, he turned, eyes wide. She met his gaze, and though her voice was soft, it carried the strength of her soul. Together, Nathan's lips parted, and then a fierce smile spread across his face. Together, the raiders opened fire. Red bolts of energy tore through the night, striking trees, sending sparks flying. Nathan fired back, his shots loud and raw. Illyra raised her communicator, pressing every button, forcing it to release its final burst of power. The device sparked violently in her hand, but a sharp signal exploded into the sky like a cry for help. The battle was chaos. Nathan fought with every ounce of strength, his body aching, his rifle hot in his hands. Illyra stood with him, guiding him, pulling him aside when blasts came too close. Each second felt like an eternity, each breath a victory against the impossible. And then the sky answered. A new light appeared above the forest, bright and sharp, cutting through the smoke. It was not the red glow of raiders, but the silver-blue shimmer of Illyra's people. A ship descended, sleek and powerful, its engines roaring with promise. The raiders froze, their confidence faltering. Illyra's knees weakened with relief. The signal had worked. Help had come. The allied ship fired beams of light, scattering the raiders. Some fled into the shadows, others fell where they stood. Their leader snarled, retreating as the ground shook under the force of the new arrival. Within minutes, the danger that had filled the forest was gone. Silence returned, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. Nathan dropped his rifle, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed, but Illyra caught him, holding his weight against her. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "You saved me." He shook his head weakly, trying to catch his breath. "No," he said, "we saved each other." And for the first time since she had fallen to this strange world, Illyra truly believed it. The battle had ended, but the night still trembled with its echoes. The forest smelled of smoke and scorched earth. Broken branches littered the ground, and faint sparks glowed among the trees where the raiders had fallen or fled. Above, the sleek silver ship of Illyra's people hovered like a guardian star, its soft light washing over the cabin and the two figures standing together in the clearing. Nathan leaned heavily against Illyra, his breath ragged, his body trembling with exhaustion. His rifle was gone, his strength nearly spent, but his spirit burned bright. Illyra held him close, her glowing eyes filled with tears that shimmered like liquid light. She had survived the crash, she had survived the hunt, and she had survived the raid, not because of luck, not because of her people, but because of him. Because of a human who refused to let her face death alone. A ramp opened from the descending ship. Figures stepped out, tall and graceful, their silver skin reflecting the starlight. Illyra's people. For a moment, her chest tightened with relief. She had thought she might never see them again. Yet, mixed with her relief, came something else's ache, sharp and unexpected. Because she knew what their arrival meant. It meant leaving him. The leader of her people stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. "Illyra," he said in her language, "we received your signal. You are safe now. Come." She did not move. Her arms stayed wrapped around Nathan, her body refusing to let go. Her people looked at her strangely, their eyes falling on the wounded human who had stood against impossible odds. Some showed disdain, some curiosity, but none of them understood what had truly happened here. Nathan lifted his head, his face pale but steady. "Go with them," he whispered. "You'll be safe now." His words cut her deeper than any wound. Go. Just leave. After all he had done, after the fire, the fear, the battles fought side by side, the thought of stepping onto that ship without him felt unbearable. Her people could take her home, yes, but home no longer felt like a place. It felt like a person, and that person was Nathan. Her leader repeated the command, "Alira," now, her glowing eyes filled with fire. For the first time in her life, she defied the voice of authority. She held Nathan tighter and shook her head. No. A hush fell over the clearing. Her people stared at her in disbelief. No one disobeyed the call of home. No one chose an outsider. But Alira's voice was steady when she spoke again, this time in broken human words, words Nathan would understand. "I not want leave you," she whispered, looking directly at him. "I stay." Nathan's heart stumbled in his chest. He had expected her to go, expected to lose her to the stars. But now, hearing those words, he felt something powerful rise inside him, something stronger than fear, stronger than exhaustion. He placed his hand gently over hers. "If you stay," he said softly, "then you'll never be alone again." Her tears fell freely, shining like diamonds in the firelight. For the first time, she smiled fully, not a small, uncertain smile, but one filled with certainty and love. Behind them, her people shifted, whispering among themselves. Some protested, some argued, but others watched in silence, as if they too saw the truth glowing in this strange union. Perhaps the stories they had told of humans were not the full truth. Perhaps there was something in this species worth more than fear. Alira did not waver. She turned her back on the silver ship and chose instead the small wooden cabin. The man who had risked everything for her, and the fragile but powerful bond they had built. Her choice was not just for love, it was for trust, for hope, for a future neither of them could yet imagine. The ship rose again, disappearing into the sky, leaving only silence and the whisper of wind in the trees. Alira and Nathan stood alone once more, but this time, the loneliness was gone. Nathan looked at her, his eyes tired but shining. "So, what now?" he asked with a faint smile. Alira tilted her head, her silver hair catching the moonlight. She didn't have all the words yet, but she knew the answer in her heart. Now, together. They turned toward the cabin, hand in hand, their steps slow but sure. Above them, the stars burned bright, no longer distant or cold. For Alira, the galaxy had always been home, but tonight, she discovered something greater. Home was not a place among the stars. Home was where someone chose to stand beside you, even when the universe turned against you. And for Nathan, who once believed his life was small and ordinary, everything had changed. He had fought, he had protected, and he had been chosen because of strength, not because of power, but because of the human heart that had always been his greatest weapon in that forest. Under those endless stars, a story was written that neither her people nor his would ever forget. A story of fear turned to trust, of strangers turned to family, of two souls, one human, one alien who proved that love was the most powerful force in the galaxy. Humans were not monsters. Humans were not weak. Humans were worth saving. And to Alira, one human had become worth everything.